the number one thing has to be that it's got to be a good product or a good service, first and foremost. And we can think of, there's plenty of products in the market that people, I mean, look at Ferrari, for example. Like, have you ever seen a TV commercial for Ferrari on the TV?
No,
You ever see on a
no,
bus shelter, Ferrari, come and book a test drive now? You
no.
know what I mean? The product
Yeah.
sells itself. So what's driving people to be not authentic or away from the truth? I
Mm,
think, yeah, I think it's the shiny object syndrome, right?
mm,
The
mm.
Lamborghinis, the Ferraris, the private jets, the million followers, the likes, going to hotels, um, being able to retire by the age of 30 on a beach, passive income, all these buzzwords, people
Yeah.
taking shortcuts. I think that's what it is. It's a society where people don't want to work like back in the day. And that's the thing I love. The push is for that, is because people are chasing the wrong things. They're not willing to put in the work. If they ask you for a business strategy and you tell them that it's a 10-year journey, they need to start here. They need to start as an account manager or a business development manager and work, get some skills. They don't want to hear that. They don't want that advice. They want to know if they can pay somebody, or if they can boost an ad, or if they can pay a marketing agency, or if they can have some catch cry, or say something stupid on the internet like hawk tour or whatever, and then they go viral and they think, oh, well, I'll try and do that. It's kind of like throwing mud at the wall and hopefully something sticks. And that guy that we spoke about earlier, that, why are you gay? Like,
Yeah.
that guy was a great example. Like, the world probably didn't know about him before that. He said one line and it went viral, right? So people have seen
Mm.
that and they think, oh, okay, well, one video. So they're just creating all this content, hopefully to get that one lucky thing that's going to make them famous. But if you look at,
Mm.
well, two things, if you look at,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Youth Mentors and Visionaries again. Glad to have you here again. Today we have a great, awesome guest all the way from Australia. I believe we're taking Africa to become a superpower by incorporating all the continents to just have powerful conversations with us. And today we're going to learn a lot. Actually, today we have our first male guest of
wow,
2025. A
very
youth
good.
mentors and VCs. Yeah, so we believe we're going to learn a lot. But before we start conversation with him, I want to shout out my sponsors, more. They deal with plant-based coconut yogurt made in Watamu. For those who are lactose intolerant, this is your plug actually to go and get the yogurt. For those who don't consume dairy, we got a solution for you from Rico Amor. Also, our brand partner called Allo.co. They deal with women fashion. Actually, for these ladies who love luxury brands, this is your way to go. And also, we have a school in Kenya called Rufina School that we support with donations and charity for the children living in the slum areas. So we're gonna put a picture so that you guys, for those who love giving, should go and support this school because we believe giving is receiving. And now to the best part. I want to introduce my guest. I've been looking forward for this conversation for a very long period of time, and I hope we're going to learn today as I've put my notes, my notebook and my pen ready to learn as well. Welcome, Kel, to Youth Mentors and VCs. How are you today?
Good. Thank you, Shaq. Thanks for the introduction and for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. So even before we start, what should people expect today?
Just honesty, authenticity, probably something different to what they would probably hear from a lot of people who are perhaps trying to sell them something. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. So uh, my career is definitely very unique and different in everything I've done. So hopefully something different, unique. Uh, and maybe something inspirational that they can take away and to help them in their own journey, whatever that is.
Amazing, amazing. So even before we start, maybe you can just give us a little bit of introduction, because I do want to do a full introduction, because I felt like I might miss some titles. Maybe you give us
Yeah,
all your titles in one package.
fair enough. So yeah, thank you again. I suppose I'll try and just summarize it briefly. I started my first, I suppose, professional venture as an entrepreneur. I wanted to open up a pizza restaurant. I was working for a well-known pizza chain in Brisbane, and my mother said to me, she said, you know, you should probably travel or see a little bit more of the world before you invest really hard into a business. Because if you have a business or a restaurant hospitality, you're stuck to it. Your weekends, your evenings, that's kind of it. So I took her advice and I joined the Australian Federal Police, which was something I always wanted to do as a young man. I was very highly motivated and driven. I couldn't sit still. I wanted to do something exciting and fun. I'd seen movies like The Bourne Identity and Denzel Washington in Training Day and all these cool sort of action figures. So I thought it would be really cool to do that in real life. So I joined the Federal Police and I got in when I was around 20, 21 years of age. And very quickly, I was applied for and selected into a tactical operations unit, like a SWAT team or counter-terrorism unit. So it was a very young age. If you look at 21-year-olds today, 21-year-old males, a lot of them might be studying still or living at home with their parents. I was working in counter-terrorism, looking after the Australian Prime Minister. So it was a really interesting journey, and I think to this day I'm one of the youngest ever to be in that kind of role and have the qualifications that I had. By the time I was 22, I was already a qualified weapons instructor, defensive tactics, riot squad instructor, training counterterrorism, first response. I was looking after the Prime Minister, the Governor General, the US Secretary of State, the US President, the Pope. When all these people would come into Australia, it was our task to protect them. We protected the Olympic torch that came through and toured through Australia. Just a lot of those sort of high-profile jobs. It was a really cool experience. And then from there, I suppose just to summarise, I used my training and skills, and I went into an Australian TV series called Home and Away. It's kind of like in America, it's like Days of Our Lives, but it's the Australian version. It's run for about 36 years. And I became one of the regular recurring police officers on the show, Constable Neil Stevenson. So I transitioned from a world of Australian Federal Police to being a police officer on the screen. And during that time, I suppose I needed some more sort of, I suppose, a bit of a challenge and some more financial rewards. So I went into business. I founded a $200 million IT business. Was managing professional athletes, brands, and then after a few things, I transitioned into what I'm doing now, which is using all the expertise into positioning brands, marketing, sales, and coming in more as a high-end fixer. So we've got a lot of digital agencies, which we spoke about in our emails back and forth. And I don't know if you've ever seen the film Pulp Fiction. Have you ever seen that film? There's this guy in there there's this guy called Winston Wolfe, and he's like the fixer. So he fixes things in the movie. He comes and he sort of does things and he leaves. So that's how I've positioned my brand is a high-end fixer with tactical operations background. Instead of the fluffy stuff, emails back and forth, this, that, 6 months, 12 months, I come in like a tactical operations unit. I kick in the door. I diagnose the problem. I execute a strategy, and then I leave. So I go into businesses, fix branding, strategy, marketing with all the experience I've learned. High energy, high impact, high return, no fluff, no rubbish, no bullshit. Solve problems for businesses and then leave. If they need me again, they can call me and come back. Or if they're fixed and they don't need help, then that's great. I've done my job. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Amazing. So many things I'm picking from this. So maybe my first question will be like, fixing. Is it all industries, or you have a specific industries of businesses that you can fix?
Yeah, that's a good question. So look, I think the short answer is all industries, because where I play and where I fix is their branding, their marketing, and their message strategy. particularly around content creation. I think it's become a little bit of a buzzword because a lot of businesses, a lot of agencies and people have realized there's a lot of money in content. As we were talking, TikTok and Instagram, all these things have blown up. But it's really at its infancy still. It's only the last, say, 3 to 5 years, maybe not even 5 years, maybe 3 years, that platforms like Instagram have been used as a commercial tool. As you know, when Instagram first came out, you were sharing, your photos, you were putting the Valencia filter on there, of the sunset, having a coffee. And only recently it's really transitioned into a tool for business. And what's funny is usually in the infancy stage, there's a little bit of research that needs to go into it. But if you look in the market, there's all these experts. Everybody's an expert on branding, marketing, and content creation. And it's funny because when you delve a little bit deeper and you have a look at some of these agencies, the experience isn't there. For me, if you're a digital agency, your core competency should be able to be shooting and using a digital camera. But there are a lot of agencies where they'll come and someone will shoot on an iPhone and they think that shooting content is going to fix a business's problem or a message. And the analogy that I give is like you look at a famous film like The Godfather or any James Cameron film, Titanic, without the director or the visionary, the creative directing that story, directing that film is not good. It doesn't win awards. You can't get the script of The Godfather or Titanic and give it to a camera guy and go and shoot Titanic and make an award-winning movie. It's not going to work. But a lot of agencies are operating like that, where they think, let's just shoot a lot of content and something will stick, or hopefully something will go viral and resonate. And that's why we've got so much content. We've got so much content coming at us all the time. But the reality is it doesn't work a lot of the time. That model, without experience of directing, being in movies, in film and television, I don't understand how you can start a digital agency. It's just, it doesn't make sense. So I suppose the gap that I saw is I didn't want to go down the agency model and do things like that, where I need to lock clients in for $5,000 a month or 10,000 or whatever it is. My strategy was always adding value first. I genuinely believed in business. If you add value first and you fix people's problems, you actually listen to what their problems are and you fix them, you don't ever have to worry about money or getting business, because everybody has problems. Every business has problems and challenges. So my model was more around using the experience that I had and recognizing that there was a gap in the market of a high-end fixer, somebody who comes in without all the overheads, without the massive, warehouse, business cost, all these staff, because everybody's getting 3 or 4 cafe lattes a day, going out for 2-hour lunches, and therefore they need to charge the client lots of money. I was like, well, I'm happy to keep it lean, like a lone wolf kind of model, like using the experience I have in film, directing, producing, is coming into a business, not taking 6 months to diagnose a problem, like literally 6 minutes. We can sit together, cut out all the fluff, cut out all the coffees, cut out all the bullshit. What's the problem that your business is facing? This. Okay, what do we need to do to fix it? Cool, let's fix this, let's do this, let's do that. And demonstrating that through content. And putting a script together, putting together a narrative, because that's what filmmaking is. It's storytelling. You know what I mean? When you go and watch a movie, and why do people watch 10 episodes of the Sopranos or Game of Thrones or whatever? Is it because there's some fancy cuts and there's horses and there's lights or there's helicopters or there's mafia or there's cars? Like, what is it? They invest in the characters. James Gandolfini from The Sopranos was a great example. He was such a complex, interesting character. And people watch those shows. That's why people watch shows like Married at First Sight or The Block. I don't know if you have that over there, but these home renovation shows where people are interested and they're invested in the characters in the show. Oh, who are they? What are they doing now? So it's not just about going to a business and going, let's create content, let's shoot a month's worth of content and upload it. Boring. Yeah, you might get views, you might get likes, but the question always is does that content translate to sales? If you're in jewelry, does it sell more watches? If you're in the car game, do you sell more cars? If you're a physiotherapist, are you getting more clients coming in? Everything you do with storytelling and with sales and marketing needs to drive an outcome in business. You need to be having more people coming through the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and I think a lot of this stuff has just become vanity metrics now. I had a client recently that I spoke to, and they were in the food industry. They were not interested in fixing the problems that they had in their business. All they wanted me to do is because they saw that I had some LinkedIn videos that went viral, and I was creating some very high traffic content on, some stuff I was posting was getting 100,000 views for a client in 2 days on Instagram, organic content, not paid. And all this brand wanted to do was get videos that had 200,000 views. But their problems were so much deeper. They didn't want to address it. They just wanted to go viral, for the sake of going viral. So it's a really interesting period that we're living in at the moment. And that's, I think where I saw the opportunity as well, I can sort of separate out and do something that hasn't been done before.
Have you ever found an industry that challenged you and you couldn't fix the problem?
Well, not yet. I mean, I have, that food industry business, that was a good example. So that was a problem I could fix, but they didn't want to fix the problem. They just wanted high traffic content. So if that's the case, like, again, my model is not an agency model where it's come one, come all, where I'm just about trying to make money. If there's no problem to be fixed, or it's something that I can't fix, then we're not going to do business. My model, I'm not about just trying to take money from people. I'm fortunate. I've had a very great career, and I've done a lot of different things, and I'm not, I suppose, desperate to take money from people. So I'm sure that, there would be a problem that I come in, and maybe if I can't fix it, then that's it. I'd rather tell them that and say, look, this is, outside of what I can do, or we don't have the budget to fix it, or that whatever reasons, then we probably wouldn't do business.
Okay. So because our podcast is usually focused on assisting startups to go to the next level, what about businesses? They still don't have the budget to have professionals like you who can switch their business to go to another level. How can you assist them if they don't have the budget, but they know that your experience or your advice can actually take them to the next level?
Yeah, so a number of ways. I suppose, following me on LinkedIn, because some of the videos that I'm dropping over the next few weeks is talking about my experience in business and the challenges that I went through in the startup. Because you're right, a lot of businesses, you don't have a big budget to start necessarily to employ somebody like me, or to have professional crews or things like that. So the content that we connected over was sharing just a little snippet of my experience there. So the thing that I would say is the most important is not, it's not about what you say, it's about what you do in business, right? So a lot of people think if they make this great content, or they spend all this money on branding and marketing, it's going to help the product. But the number one thing has to be that it's got to be a good product or a good service, first and foremost. And we can think of, there's plenty of products in the market that people, look at Ferrari, for example. Like, have you ever seen a TV commercial for Ferrari on the TV?
No.
You ever see on a bus shelter, Ferrari, come and book a test drive now?
No.
You know what I mean? The product sells itself. So I think this new wave of entrepreneurs and 10x and scale and e-commerce, people have bought into the myth that, there's something I need to do or that I can't afford. But if I was able to afford that, or if I was able to do that, my business would skyrocket. And that's not the case. I think a lot of those guys are frauds, are ripping people off because they're making them believe there's some product or there's a magic bullet that can fix their business or take a startup from here to here. And they're like, oh my gosh, if only I had that. So what they do is they scrape the money together, they buy their course or they go to the seminar, and they don't realize that's how that guy's business model works, is selling this lure or this hook for people to spend their money. And then at the end of it, there's no real value, and they're still in the same position. They're either in the same position with a great product, or they're in the same position with a terrible product that nobody wants. But I suppose Ferrari is a good example. Lamborghini, any of those luxury brands, if you focus on the product and the service and getting that right, and making sure that it's filling a market or fixing, that it's finding a market, or it's filling a gap, or it's fixing a problem for people, the product a lot of the time can sell itself. People will, word of mouth, one thing will lead to the next, will lead to the next. So I think the best advice I can give on that space is focus on creating a product or a service that people actually want. Or my business is a good example. It's different to everybody else. And I might charge more money, in a short term, but if it fixes a problem or it gets a return on investment, an ROI for businesses, they're happy because it solves a problem that they have directly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what about for founders who they might feel that their product is good. And maybe the product is only good to them, but not to the market.
Yeah.
What advice
Yeah.
can you
Well,
give
and
them?
that's such a good question. And I actually had this discussion only last week with a textiles, a clothing manufacturer. And I'm sure the client won't mind me telling this story. Lovely lady. Her and her husband are in this business, and they've been in textiles for 17 years, I think. And they wanted to create a bikini for young girls that was more modest, that was covering up, because a lot of the stuff you see out these days, everything's revealing, everything's out there. There's not modest. So she said, I think if we create this product, it'll be really good. It's something different to what's out there. Public perception is, people don't have standards anymore, so we'll create this bikini. They had the ability and everything to do it. And what do you think happened when they created this product and they put it out there? So yeah, as I
Yeah.
said, I'm sure this client won't mind me telling that story. But I mean, what do you think happened when they went out and designed this bikini that was a little bit more modest? What do you think happened when they designed the bikini and went to sell it?
Maybe people said yes, but also no.
Most people said no, it's not what the market wanted. It was a good idea and it sounded good having, younger girls and teenagers covering up and being a little bit more modest, but that's not what the market wanted. They wanted the stuff that was being promoted by rappers and things out in there and TV. You know what I mean? They didn't
Yeah.
want those things, like a new pair of shoes. They might be the most comfortable pair of shoes, but if it's not trendy and it's not what everyone else is wearing, then yeah. So I suppose that's where, focus groups or, you know, testing your ideas against other people and just rather than thinking, okay, what do I think is great? It is trying to identify also where the gap in the market is.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So there is a little bit of that trial and error.
Mm. Okay, okay. So people should not go for passion, they should go for what is working in the market.
I think it's a mix of both. I don't think it's a one size fits all because, yeah, some people who are really passionate about what they do, they can, they can find a market and that resonates with people and it works. You look at somebody like Elon Musk with the brilliance and what he comes up with, his passion, and it's found success. But there are a lot of people, like you said, who have a great idea or they're passionate about something, but it might not be what they want, what the market wants, and it's not commercially successful. So, and acting is a really good example of that. I know a lot of actors I've worked with over the years, they're so passionate about acting, it's their life's work. But then, you look at them and you're like, you're not actually that good an actor. You know what I mean? So just because it's something they love, it doesn't mean that everyone else loves their work either. So sometimes it's about being brutally honest with people too. It's like, listen, you're not that great an actor. You probably shouldn't sit around for the next 30 years waiting to be famous because it's not going to happen. And you're going to go broke in the meantime. And everyone around you who's relying on you, especially if you're a man and you're the provider of the house, you've got to look after a family, wife, and kids. Everyone else is going to suffer because of your one bad decision, thinking, oh, I'm going to get famous one day, or I love acting so much, it's my life's work. Well, you know what? You know what I like doing? I like driving cars. I like driving around. I like racing. Am I going to be a Formula One driver? Probably not. So, I can enjoy that in my pastime. But if I'm going to try and drive a car every day at 40 years old and become a Formula One driver, it's probably not going to be too successful. So,
Mm, mm. Yeah, so as you mentioned, there's that reality that something is not working, but not so many
yeah,
people might appreciate that type of advice. They'll be like, oh, you don't
yeah,
believe in me. I believe one day it's going to
exactly.
work out.
You've got it.
What do you advise
Yeah.
them?
What's that? What's my advice to them?
Yeah, yeah. Because often people say, oh, it takes 10,000 hours for this to be
That's
successful.
true.
I believe
Yeah.
in myself. But in reality, it's not, it's never going to work.
No. And there's one thing there. I mean, in the Bible, it says, don't cast pearls to the swine. So people who don't want to listen, don't waste your time. If you tell somebody once, um, great, and they take it on board, fantastic. But some people, that's exactly what you said, Shaq, was perfect. Oh, you don't believe in me. You're stomping on my dreams. You're trying to kill my creativity. There's
Mm.
all that, so they've been brainwashed in a way to think that any advice is hate or it's trying to stop their dream. And I had a client like that actually recently, a 19-year-old property investor, which I'm sharing some stuff on my LinkedIn about him soon.
Mm.
And some of his videos were getting 600,000 views organically.
Mm.
he was creating content, giving property advice. Young kid, he'd done really well. He's bought a few properties, but he was positioning himself as an authority. He was trying to teach people, and his knowledge, it was probably missing the mark, to be fair. His content wasn't great, and he became a meme. So people started sharing his content to make fun of him, to ridicule him. And in the comments, people were like, how do I delete this account? This is the dumbest advice. This kid literally put on, a three-piece suit and asked his mum to borrow her car on the way to the year 10 formal. Like, the comments were horrible. And he was a great example because I reached out to him on LinkedIn advice, and I said, listen, do you like the way your content's going? Do you enjoy getting these negative comments? I said, if you continue this for another 3 to 6 months, you'll destroy your brand and all credibility. You can't keep doing this. And the message I sent him, I said, look, you have a choice. I said, you can either take this as hate or as feedback.
So you told me if you continue like this?
Yeah, I said, if you continue like this, your brand will be destroyed in 3 to 6 months. I said, parody accounts about this guy to make fun of him. And I said, you can either take my message and my message that I've sent to you as hate, or you can take it as feedback. If a lot of people are telling you the same thing, or the acting analogy or business analogy, if you're not selling product or you're not booking work, you're not getting work, maybe you need to look at the strategy and go, is this working? There's always that testing, that feedback. But he was very open-minded. Some people have an open mind to this, to answer your question, and some people have a closed mind. Some people, it doesn't matter what you tell them, they're going to continue on that path. And he was very open-minded. He said, no, I agree. I see where you're coming from. And he said, what do we need to do to change it? So I brought him on board as a client. We had a few brief conversations. I told him what I thought needed to change in his brand. Said, you're getting a lot of visibility, a lot of traction. And all we did with his brand, essentially, is we changed him from the teacher to the student. So I said, there are a lot more people who are more successful, who have better knowledge, who have more property than you, more money. Why don't you become, that guy who goes around to people and says, nice car, what do you do for a living? Or how much money have you made in a single year? I said, you could be that guy. You could be that platform for real estate. So I said, you're getting massive views. You're getting 300,000 to 600,000 views per video. And I said, look at what people need. Going back to where's the gap? What do people need? Real estate agents, they struggle typically with content because all their content is a new house, a new property. It's boring. People don't really want to follow necessarily and look at houses they can't buy. So what a lot of real estate agents and pages want, they want views, they want visibility, they want, to be seen in the market. So I said, your channel is getting massive views. I said, why don't you use those views and shine it on real estate agents and start going, and it's much like your channel, Shaq, what you're doing. You're becoming that conduit between Africa and the rest of the world for helping. And it's you're adding a lot of value because you're that intermediary to help bridge the gap, which is exactly what we did. So we changed his brand strategy. He's not the expert anymore. He's now the teacher. And a lot of people love the authenticity. We did a video where he said, look, I think I missed the mark on my content. I was trying too hard to kind of fake it till I make it. And straight away, that video, so within a week of us starting to work, he dropped that video, got over 100,000 views, over 400 positive comments straight away. His following skyrocketed. And it was just a little tweak. He was literally heading this direction. We picked him up, turned him around, and he's going now in the other direction. So something simple like that was an adjustment. But someone else in the same position might not have wanted to hear that advice, and they would have continued doing what they were doing. So it's up to the individual whether they want to be receptive. And something I always say to people, I said this in another one of my videos, what I find kills a lot of businesses these days is not that there is a lack of information out there that's available or the tools or the resources. It's people's egos, because everything these days in Instagram and TikTok is the selfie. It's about everyone is chasing views and likes and virality, and everyone wants to get famous. They want to get, that external validation. So with a mindset like that, sometimes it's very hard to humble yourself and take on advice and go, okay, maybe I'm wrong. So the analogy I use is, most people today, they don't want to be Robin. They always just want to be Batman all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I've been able to do well in my career. Is I've worked with a lot of wealthy people, a lot of successful people, a lot of people who knew a lot more than I did. And I was very aware of that. that if I was in the room with certain people, sometimes I've got to be Robin, you know, in my own business, or if I'm going to a client and I need to fix a problem. In that scenario, I'm Batman. I'm the guy that needs to fix the problem. But one of the businesses that I was involved in the startup from from the ground, the guy who was funding this, he was a billionaire. So when I'm in the room with that guy, I am absolutely Robin. If I'm going to be in a room with a guy who's worth $1 billion and is one of the biggest, most successful person in his category, there are still some people who would try to pretend, or the ego would not allow them to take a back seat and just listen. When people say you've got two ears and one mouth, it's that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So yeah.
So for you, you have a very unique part of the brain, because not so many people can see the challenges in a business like you do. So what does it take to be Michele? What does it take for
It's
you
funny you
to
say
be
that.
someone who can spot those challenges in businesses?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I had this same discussion with a client last week, and she asked me this. She asked me the same question, and I struggled to answer her. And she said, "You know what I think it is?" Because we both connected. We were both Christian, and we were speaking about our faith and belief in God. And she
Mm.
said, "You know what the Bible calls that?" And I said, "What's that?" She goes, "It's the gift of discernment." And I went,
Yeah.
"It's actually true, because it speaks about that, in the Bible, the gift of discernment." And I'm not saying necessarily that it's a gift that I've been blessed with. No one else has it. I'm still figuring that out. Is it something that I think part of it is things that I've learned over my career, because I've done a lot of different things at a high level. Maybe part of it is people's nature or their makeup, but that's what it is. It's discernment. It's being able to look at a situation, and to use a Christian or a scriptural analogy. Am I allowed to talk about that on
Yeah,
this
yeah,
show?
yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
So, so in the Bible, Christ, he refers to himself. He says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me." And the Bible is always talking about truth. And when we speak about darkness, it's about deception and it's about lies. And whether you believe in God or not, or whatever you want to, however you want to describe it, it exists in the sense that we live in a world where there's good and evil, there's truth and there's lies. And I think in that spirit of discernment, in any scenario, I genuinely think one of the best things that people can learn is to being able to look at a situation and to know fact from fiction. I genuinely believe if any scenario in life, if you're able to know the truth of that situation, what the right thing to do is, what's real, what's wrong, you can make a good decision. But when there's lies and the waters are muddy and it's whatever, it makes it very difficult. So I think it's literally that, is being able to discern what's real, what's not real, what's authentic, and use that as your basis to make decisions.
Okay, okay. So you believe most marketing today is broken, right? So what is the biggest problem and how can businesses fix it?
I think, yeah. I think there's a number of things. One of the biggest things is, I think, as I said before, people are chasing the wrong things. They're chasing likes. They want to be noticed. They want attention. Uh, they want to go viral. They want to be famous. They want to do all these things, and they genuinely believe that there's a silver bullet, that if they're able to, promote or scale or do this, that their product will sell. Um, but I think the challenge is to try and stay away from that worldly material stuff and focus on truth, as I said just before, and authenticity is real. People know very quickly, uh, what they can smell a rat. They can smell something that's real, fake, if they're being sold to, because people have just become accustomed to seeing so much content out there these days. You can tell immediately, and I'll give you an example. And usually young people do this, young girls a lot of the time, when they talk, if they're selling, it's kind of a musical note. So I'll give you an example as an actor, right? So if we're
Yeah,
talking, it's like, "Hi guys, today we're here with so and so, and we've got the new product, and it's this and it's this." It's like da 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 da. It's that kind of tone. And as soon as you hear that, you go, nobody talks like that. If I'm talking to you, Shaq, and I'm like, "Hey Shaq, would you like to go out to dinner?" I'm like, "Hi Shaq, how are you? Would you like to go out and have a coffee with," like, you don't talk like that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think people who are not trained actors or presenters, when they get on camera, they think they've got to do a persona, or they've got to put on this thing. So it's more, I think, just being authentic and real is telling people the truth. Like, people appreciate that, and people know if you're not being honest or if you're not being truthful. And I think, that video that you found me on where it went viral, certainly that was the comments that I got in there. It said, finally somebody telling the truth, being real, just telling it as it is. I wasn't trying to sell anything. I'm not saying that I was a hero. A lot of the things that I did were, some was by luck, some was right place, right time. Others was hard work, and just, yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you think is making people, okay, I know there's the trend of social media and everything, but what do
Sure.
you think is pushing people to be, I don't want to say fake, but not authentic? What is really driving people to head to that route?
What's driving people to be not authentic or away from the truth? I
Mm.
think, yeah, I think it's the shiny object syndrome, right?
Mm.
The
Mm.
Lamborghinis, the Ferraris, the private jets, the million followers, the likes, going to hotels, um, being able to retire by the age of 30 on a beach, passive income, all these buzzwords, people
Yeah.
taking shortcuts. I think that's what it is. It's a society where people don't want to work like back in the day. And that's the thing I love about your continent, too, and about people from Africa is, I've never been there, but from what I understand, people there are hard workers. There are a lot,
Mm.
as a society, it's a hard working, even I think of being a football, a soccer fan. I remember, in the World Cup years ago, Senegal, coming out of nowhere and doing really well. And then
Mm.
countries like the Ivory Coast producing athletes like Didier Drogba. The work ethic, of African people. A lot of African people I met through my church as well. They're very faithful. They're old school traditional values. And I think the West is something that a lot of the Western society lacks, maybe because, you know, in some ways they haven't experienced some of the poverty or some of the challenges that other continents and countries have had. So, if you're living, for example, I've got a dog, a working dog. But if you're a little fluffy poodle and you're inside and everything's done for you all the time, you don't need to work as hard to get somewhere. And I think that's the push is for that, is because people are chasing the wrong things. They're not willing to put in the work. If they ask you for a business strategy and you tell them that it's a 10-year journey, they need to start here. They need to start as an account manager or a business development manager and work, get some skills. They don't want to hear that. They don't want that advice. They want to know if they can pay somebody, or if they can boost an ad, or if they can pay a marketing agency, or if they can have some catch cry or say something stupid on the internet like pop tour or whatever, and then they go viral and they think, oh, well, I'll try and do that. It's kind of like throwing mud at the wall and hopefully something sticks. And that guy that we spoke about earlier, that, why are you gay? Like,
Yeah.
that guy was a great example. Like, the world probably didn't know about him before that. He said one line and it went viral, right? So people have seen
Mm.
that and they think, oh, okay, well, one video. So they're just creating all this content, hopefully to get that one lucky thing that's going to make them famous. But if you look at,
Mm.
well, two things, if you look at the longevity of that, like that Hop Tour girl, I've never heard from her since. It's like up and then it's down.
Mm.
Or if you look at the amount of people that are actually going to go viral and then go on and have a great career, it's very few. So if that's their business plan, um, yeah, it's probably the same reason why people play the lotto, right? They're hoping to get that
Yeah.
one lucky ticket. But
Mm.
if you tell them, listen, my journey, for example, it's over 20 years of where I've gone. I've gone in different careers, different professions. But I don't think an 18 or 20-year-old, a young person these days, they don't want to hear that. You know, by the time you're
Mm.
40, you can do that, because why? They see on Instagram that there are 20-year-olds driving Lamborghinis, you know?
Yeah.
So they think,
Yeah.
well, I don't need to do that. I'm going to do this. So I think the push is chasing the shiny object rather than creating something valuable. And family businesses are a good way to demonstrate this. I've got a lot of, so I'm an Italian, half Swiss background. And the culture in Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne that I grew up in was around a lot of Italians. And a lot of Italians are known in our country for having trades. They're builders, or they're concreters, or they're tilers, or they're in smash repairs with cars, or they run the family business. And it's 2 or 3 generations. A family business started small and now it's up here. The son has taken over and now his son is getting into the business. And it's built on credibility and hard work, and they're offering a good product and a good service. But try telling that to a young kid that, You might not be successful, but your kids will be, you know? It's not a very inspiring message, you know, because they don't want to do that. So, and I think if you're trying to always chase trends and you're trying to chase what's the next crypto thing or what's the next Amway or whatever it is, you're always going to be chasing the next thing, you know? And what I find interesting is when I talk to people like this, clients or young men particularly, it's like I ask them who all the people is that who the people are rather that they look up to, or who are their role models, who are the people that they aspire to be. They're all individuals, unique, like a Cristiano Ronaldo or a Conor McGregor. All these people who came from nothing and they worked their way up. Those guys weren't trying to necessarily copy or emulate. They were very unique. I mean, Conor McGregor in the UFC, he was a very interesting, he exploded onto the scene. He was a unique character. There was no one like him. But everything that's being pushed in content is selling you a course or a model or be like this. They're trying to create 1,000 copies of themselves. You know, buy my course and you can be like me. But the irony is the person who's selling that course got famous and successful, most likely because they were unique and they did something that was unique to them. And that's what made them famous. And now other people are, you know, does that make sense?
Yes, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm used to the name microwave. There I'm adding a new term, shiny object syndrome. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a very unique term. But two things I want to ask from that conversation. So you spoke about God, you know, and
Yes.
there's a favor I think even God gives to businesses so that they can skyrocket. So my first question will be, how important is God, you know, just to be part of the journey in that business so that you can scale or even just get the results that you want? And secondly, um, that uniqueness, because we're finding that people who are becoming billionaires or maybe having that huge uniqueness in their career is something that is not duplicatable, or that authenticity is something that is making them become who they are. So what
Yeah.
is that ingredient that people should look for so that they become something special that everyone looks up to, instead of them searching for that, them becoming that person again, and compared to them being a unique person that is being looked up to?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a good question, and it's an interesting one too. And I think the reality is that not everybody is designed or made uh, to be someone that's going to be looked up to, you know. And I think that's a problem in itself. Is if everybody wants to chase fame or to be looked up to, I mean, yeah, you need it. You need everybody to be able to do certain things. And I think the reality, and to use the acting analogy, not every actor that's out there is going to win an Academy Award or be a world famous leading man. You know, there's only a select few people. So I know that's probably not an inspiring message to say, you know, but
That
I
is
suppose
real.
what I'm trying to say is I don't think that in business, you know, we always start with the end in mind. What's the end goal? And I think if you know the end goal is to be looked up to and admired, I mean, how do you action that plan? Like, how do you put that in place? If you say, I want to be the best fighter that I can be, or I want to be a heavyweight champion, I can do that. That's something, okay, well, you need to go to the gym. You need to start training. You need to eat right. You need to get your sleep right. You know, but if it's just a generic, so I think it's about being specific. Um, and a quote that came up, I think it was Stanislavski, he's a famous acting coach. And he said, the person you are is 1,000 times more interesting than the best actor you could ever hope to be, if that makes sense.
A lot
You
of
know, so
sense.
rather than act, if you're an interesting James Gandolfini, Christian Bale, Daniel Day-Lewis, Denzel Washington, Ryan Gosling, all these great actors, when you look at them as their characters, you can see that that's part of themselves in real life. Like Denzel Washington is a strong man. He's a leader. That's who he is in real life. So that's him. He's not acting and pretending to be that, and then he's this weak individual in real life, and he's just pretending. So I think if people focus on authenticity and just trying to be the best version of themselves, that's more interesting than them trying to be somebody else who they're not. You know, you look at you know, like a Cristiano Ronaldo, his work ethic and who he is. And Michael Jordan is another great example of somebody who was super successful. But he was unique. He was himself. You know, he wasn't trying to necessarily emulate anyone else. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes, yes. Authenticity, it does. Now my second question was about God.
Yes.
God just giving you favor for your business to, go to the next
Yeah.
level.
Well, I think, and I've seen this myself, because I've had many up moments in my life, and I've had some really low moments where I've had to rebuild. And sometimes, I think at times I lost sight of God. I got caught, you know, doing things in my own strength, you know, by my own power, and, you know, whether it's ego or whatever. And I think I lost path. And I can certainly see the times in my life where God, I've been aligned and I've had his hand of favor. And then when I went off the path, then, you know, things don't work as well. So I think I genuinely know and believe that with God, all things are possible. You know, it's called, you mean, talking the Bible, it's called about standing on the promises of God. There are certain universal laws and promises. God says in the Bible, you know, I will never leave you and forsake you. I will be with you until the ends of the earth. In the Bible, it says, fear not, 365 times exactly. And there's 365 days in the year, which means every day, do not live in fear. You know, don't create out of fear. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go broke. I need to do this. God commands. If he says do not, it's a commandment, which means if you fear or you're living in fear, it's a sin, because he's saying don't do that. So, and a lot of people understand that analogy. If you see someone in work and they're in a flow state, what people might call a flow state, or they're in their element, or they're doing what they love, versus they're coming off as desperate. Oh, I need this job. I need this. You know, they're acting out of fear. They're coming from a place of lack because they don't believe that God, their father and provider, is helping them. You know, they think they need to do it all on their own. Yeah, so it's literally that. And you know, if you believe that God is your provider and not man, or you have to do it yourself, how much more relaxed do you feel when you go to bed at night, when you hear scriptures like God talking about, well, does he not even feed the birds on the earth? He thinks about them. So are you not more important than birds, that he's going to take care of you? But again, it's the ego, it's the Batman and Robin thing. They think, well, by my own strength, I can do this, I can do that. And I think that's where that video came from, that we connected, because it was honest. Like, none of those things that I achieved. And I was actually just talking to one of my clients today. His name's Peter. He's considered like the go-to guy in the country for pizza. He founded the most successful pizza chain that's been around, and he's now starting his second venture. It's another pizza brand. And he was the same. He said, mate, like the amount of things that happen, just a random conversation here and then something happened there, blessing from God, right place, right time. That's where all the good stuff normally happens. And if people are honest, that's how things happen in life, is chance meetings, encounters, things happen. God directs your path, you know, more than I got up and, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to speak to that person and that's going to happen. It never happens like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I didn't know that we were going to be having this conversation. You know, I put the piece of content out and here we are speaking about God right now. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
didn't try and do something intentionally and reach out to you and say, hey, let's get on a podcast together. It sort of came organically. And as you said, you know, when you release this, who knows what conversations will happen down the track, or, you know, it's the Lord's work versus our work. And I think when we make the mistake of thinking that we're in control of everything, you know, like I did one period in my life, you get humbled very quickly, you know. So yeah, I think I would rather do things with God now than without him. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish many people could have the same perspective as you, because I mean, just as you say, even me, I'm not perfect, but at times I usually feel like I can do things with my own strength, but it doesn't turn out to be the right way. So,
Yeah.
so a very good perspective. So let's go back to marketing, yeah? So what outdated branding strategies do you think are still being used out there, and what should replace them?
I think when people are trying to be like other brands, or they're trying to go viral, have you ever seen there's one that's sort of circulating recently where there's, you know, in Spain where they run with the bulls, you know,
Um,
when they're
the
running
one
through the
jumping,
streets,
jumping.
no, the bull, like the bull is chasing people through the streets.
No, I've never seen that. I've never seen that
Okay,
yet.
so in Spain, they do a thing called running with the bulls. And there's this one video where a guy's running and the bull gets him with the horn. And then he hits the person. Then it cuts to a branding agency and a person smacks against like a wall and slides down, or a wrestler jumps off the ropes. And then it cuts to a guy falling on a table in the warehouse. And he's like, oh, hey, like they're trying to get attention. They're trying to go viral and they're trying to be like everybody else. And I think they're losing uh, that authenticity, that realness. If you're trying to be like everybody else, how are you going to stand out? You know what I mean? And LinkedIn is a perfect example. I was watching this video and it said something like only 9% of users on LinkedIn create short form content, where everybody else is on, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok trying to go viral and do these things. And I've shared plenty of stuff before on Instagram, and it does all right. And the one video that I shared on LinkedIn, and it got 1.2 million impressions in 2 days. So
Yeah.
I think it's just always leading with authenticity, being truthful, rather than trying to go viral or trying to be like everybody else and buy into this system. This is just my advice personally, what I do in my business. I always just think first, add value. How do I fix a problem? How do I make myself more valuable to other people, rather than trying to get famous or go viral or buy a Lamborghini? Like if you're fixing enough problems for people and you're adding value, that always comes. You know, Ronaldo, if he becomes the best player on the planet, he's going to get those big contracts from the club rather than trying to chase the dollars or trying to get famous. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
yeah, and you see a lot of players like that, and football is a great example. You see a lot of the young guys who get to that level. They could have been something great, but they got to that value, that level. They started partying, they bought the cars, and then they just dropped off because that goal wasn't big enough. It didn't sustain them. They just wanted to get to that level, and that was it. You know.
Okay, okay. So meaning even just focusing on something that is going to outlive yourself is another ingredient just to get that level of uniqueness, right?
Yeah, well, I think that it always has to be about the work. In acting, we'd always say that it always has to be about the work. It's not about the fame or this. If you're doing really great acting work and you're being very honest, you're living truthful in imaginary circumstances, your work, people are going to watch you and you're going to be interesting as an actor than if you're trying to act and be funny and do all this stuff. Uh, and it's the same in business. If you're a builder, okay, and you have the best marketing strategy, you've got the greatest drone shots, and you've got all the ads, and you pop up everywhere, but 8 out of 10 houses you build fall down, you're going to be out of building very quickly and probably in jail, right? But if
Yeah.
your goal and your focus is to be the best builder, you provide a great product, a great service, and you're consistent. If there are any issues, you fix it up. Word of mouth will spread. If you ask, do you know I know a great builder, word of mouth referral, that needs to be the focus. But I think that's probably a good analogy to what's happening in the marketplace these days, is businesses are less likely to want to look at their blind spots, or to admit where they're going wrong. And they're chasing, oh, I just want to get more exposure. I want to get seen. Well, that's great. But if you're that builder and you're 8 out of 10 homes are falling over, all you're going to have, instead of having 1,000 people knowing, you're going to have 1 million people knowing that you're the worst builder. That's not a good scenario for you.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
so I think it always has to be about the work. It has to, whatever, you've got to be my mum, her advice that she gave me when I was young, it's really the only advice that I've stuck with. She always said, be the best Michele you can be. And I was talking to someone else today. He was the same. He said, I was making chicken. I was the best chicken burger maker I could be. Then I was the best BDM. Everything he did, he just wanted to be the best at that, to do the best, to do the best, to do the best. And that's what God likes. He likes hard work. He likes people who are good representatives of him and doing the right thing. Then you'll be blessed. And he was as well, this guy that I was talking to today, where his superiors and other people saw him. And now the consultation that I'm doing for this business, he's one of the owners of the business. And he started out, making chicken burgers, you know. But
Yeah.
if his goal as a young guy making the chicken burgers was to be the boss or to do this or to do that, I don't think he would have had that journey. And people wouldn't have recognized him from his work because he probably wouldn't have been putting in the hard work and all that got him to the position that he's at now. So it always has to be the work first, and that will be blessed. It's like the parable of the talents. God gives the guy 3 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent. The other guy, he took his talents and he doubled it. And he was like, well done, my good and faithful servant. The other guy, he doubled it. And the one who only had 1 talent, he said, well, God, you only gave me 1 talent. So I didn't want to lose it. I buried it, he said to the master. And he's like, you wicked servant. Like you get given things. You've got to multiply and do things with what you have, rather than just pretend. Or does that make sense? Trying to take the express train. And that's what everyone wants to do these days. They want to take the express train. They don't want to do the work. And anything that's difficult, you tell them, that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear, what's the quick fix? How do we do this? How do we get rich? What's the next scam? What's the next this? What's the next crypto pump? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's nothing like luck. Do you believe in luck?
Do I believe in luck? Well, I believe in the saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. You know, and whether that's God blessing the work, and I genuinely believe it is that. If you work hard and you're doing the right thing, yeah. So no, I think probably I don't believe in luck. I believe in God. I believe if you work hard and you're doing the right thing and favor comes to you, that's God blessing you. People like to call it luck. People want to use all these buzzwords, but everything that people are doing, they're always trying to take God out of the mix and just call it something else, calling it karma. I don't believe in karma either. If you're doing the wrong thing, or you're ripping people off in business, or you're doing the bare minimum, and you're being lazy and bad things happen, that's not karma. I think that's probably God going, well, you're not doing the right thing. I'm not going to sort of bless you and look after you with favor anymore. So no, I don't believe in luck.
Okay, amazing. Let's talk about personal branding and real influence now. Yeah. So what do you think are the biggest myths about personal branding that are out there and even misleading entrepreneurs?
Yeah, the biggest myths about personal branding, is that the question?
Yes, that is misleading entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think the biggest myth is that this whole building your personal brand, you've got to build this. I'm a personal brand expert on this, because what it does, it puts the perception and the brand ahead of the work. Personal branding, very rarely, if you go to a personal brand consultant, very rarely you'll hear, I can't help you, go and do something of value. Personal branding, a lot of the time, the myth is that you can make something out of nothing and pretend. You can fake it till you make it, and then you can get away with it. That's the myth. There's a lot of businesses and people, and you can see in their work, that they're trying to pretend to be somebody they're not. Then you look on LinkedIn and you look at their experience before that, and it was like, today's personal branding expert was yesterday's DJ. They might have been DJing, traveling around the world for 10, 20 years, whatever, partying, doing drugs. All of a sudden, that's come to an end, and now they're a personal branding expert, or now they're this, or an entrepreneur, or it's just, it's like, but the experience doesn't weigh up. You look back what they've done. How can you do that? If I've been a plumber for the last 10 years and all of a sudden I'm telling you I'm an electrician, are you going to trust my ability to come to your house and do electrical work? There's no way. There's no chance. Well, hang on, weren't you? You were the plumber. You did all my plumbing work for the last 10 years. You might have seen some things of how the electrician works, but whether you're qualified enough to wire the house that my family are going to live in, no way. You're not qualified. So I think personal branding, again, is another quick fix. It's another buzzword that people think if you have an Instagram account, you buy followers, you record a podcast where you're in a room talking to yourself. I swear a lot of these people are doing podcasts where they're just talking to themselves in a room and they're trying to go viral. But you look there's no substance. But then you look there's a guy called, I don't know if you've heard of Harvey Norman. Have you heard of Harvey Norman in your country?
No.
So Harvey Norman is Australia's largest retailer. They're where you go to buy your TV, your phone, laptop, computers, furniture, bedding, flooring, everything that you need for the house. They have all these different departments. Harvey Norman is known as probably the #1 retail store for these kinds of things. Started by a gentleman named Jerry Harvey, who's still in the business at the moment. I think he's in his 80s. Now have a look at this guy. The guy's a billionaire. He runs one of the most successful and renowned businesses. It's one of the pillars of the Australian community. Everybody at some stage in their life has bought something from Harvey Norman. And from what I understand, this guy doesn't have a laptop. He doesn't have an email. No email, no laptop. I heard stories that he gets his socks mended. If he gets a hole in his socks, he gets them mended. He gets them fixed. He's had the same car for 20, 30 years. Do you think that guy needs personal branding?
No,
He's
no.
let his hard work and the years and the dedication of what he's doing speak for itself. But there would be people in this generation, if they didn't know who Jerry Harvey was, they'd look at his Instagram. He doesn't have one, but they'd look and go, "Oh, you're not on Insta. Oh, let's build your following." What would you rather? Would you rather pretend to be successful online and have 1 million followers, or would you rather be a Jerry Harvey type in real life and actually have bricks and mortar and have success? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even myself, I've had that. A lot of people reach out when they see some of the content that I do on LinkedIn or on Instagram. A lot of the clients, the work that we do gets hundreds of thousands of views, which is great. But my personal following, for example, is under 2,000. I don't have a big Instagram following. I haven't made that a focus. And I've had all these personal branding gurus reach out to me from overseas, people I've never heard of. You Google, they don't come up anywhere. They're not on LinkedIn. Oh, we think we can help you, develop and get to the next level. And I was like, hey, have you had any idea of who I am or what I do? You know, it's just
Yeah.
this whole this thing of personal branding. Again, they just want to skip the work and they just want the shiny object, the million followers, the beautiful content. I swear a lot of people these days would rather 1 million followers and likes and live in their parents' basement and have no money than actually be successful in real life if nobody knew about them.
Social
That's the
media
problem.
one.
I think
Social
it's
media one.
true, man. And the guy that I'm talking to today as well, this pizza guy that I told you about, super successful, very wealthy guy, public knowledge. He sold his last business to a massive, big food industry that bought the business. Mate, the guy's got like 80 followers on Instagram. His name is not even his real name. If you Google him, you can't really find him. People would look at that guy and think, oh, he needs his person. Mate, he's everything he's been doing. He's been successful in real life. He's been building businesses, employing people without that. So I think the biggest myth is that you need a personal brand. You don't. I don't think you do. If you want to be an influencer and you want to get free hotels and you want to, do a few posts so you don't have to pay for your dinner, great. But I would rather go everywhere, pay my own way, and not have to worry about personal branding or Instagramming food. It's just make it all about the work, provide a good service, a good product, something that adds value to people's lives, and let that be it. You know, that's just that's my take anyway.
So how do people distinguish? Because people have maybe the narrative of money is numbers, attention comes with money, money loves attention, numbers is currency. How do they, because maybe people are running for the rush of getting the numbers so that it can come with the success or maybe the money out of that brand that they will
Well, give
make.
me an example. What do you mean? Like, give me an example of what you're talking about. I don't quite understand.
For instance, someone might say, if I grow my Instagram to 1 million plus followers, I'll have many brands approach me so that I can market them and then make money out of it. I want to build my Instagram, my Twitter, my X to 4 million followers so that I can get brands and then maybe get the money, travel the world. They feel like if they get those numbers, it will come with the success that they want.
Yes, a few things. My question would be, how many people actually successfully do that? The other thing, and because I work with high-profile Australian athletes, some of them I manage, a lot of brands are aware of that now. That followers are fake. One of the brands that I was working with, they did an analysis of someone who had, I think, 10,000 followers versus someone who claimed that they had 1.2 million. And the engagement rate was like less than 1%. Like if you genuinely have people following you, how are less than 1% of people engaging with your post? You got 1 million followers and you're getting 45 comments or 179 comments per post. You serious? How influential are you? I actually did a study. I got an economist. I paid an economist thousands of dollars to get to the bottom of where the ROI is in branding and marketing. And one of the first things that was most valuable was short form content, 20 to say 50-second videos. But one of the other things was micro influencers. So for example, a mother who is about wellness and about, different techniques for breastfeeding or certain things. And she's known in a community where she might only have 10, 15,000 followers. If you looked at her engagement, she was far more influential and she had so many mums following her. She actually had influence more than a Kardashian. Well, Kardashian is maybe not an example, but someone who has got millions of followers you know, and they're an influencer. That's not actually the ones that have the influencers, these micro influencers that, you know, if they say this is what I use, people will actually buy, you know. Because if you went through and deleted all these bot accounts, I think people's followings would halve. You've seen in like overseas, there's phone farms where there's these walls and there's these sliding chairs and there's like 10,000 phones. It's fake. It's a business in itself. You know, if you go on Instagram, you click boost post and you want it to be viewed by more people, you can pay money to get it viewed. It's not real. And the other thing I'd say about that too, if you're talking about longevity of a career, I mean, how long? I mean, a brand's going to reach out to you and give you free hotels when you're 60, 70, when you're in your 50s. Are you still going to be relevant? You know what I mean?
No.
You're going to be a new person, the next young 20-year-old. So if that's your business model, is to get a couple of free hotels and someone sends you some handbags and you go to a few launch events and you get paid $5,000 a year, if that's your business model for 30, 40 years, I think that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. If that's your best use of time, again, it's ego, it's chasing fame, it's clout. Yeah, maybe a few people might make money out of that, but it has a time frame. I would rather build a bricks and mortar business or a service or something that will add value for a longer period of time, because these influencers, you know, I think there's going to be a massive rate of depression in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And when these people, young girls, good looking guys, start aging and they've tied up all their value and their worth in how they look and these beautiful photos, I think they're going to have a rude shock, and it's going to be, a lot of people are going to, you know, find it really difficult to, what are they going to do after that? They've got no skills because what are they going to do? Who's going to employ these people?
Especially with this generation of AI that is really revolutionizing so many things.
Well, yeah, like some of these models now, these Instagram models, they're AI generated and things, you know, you've really got to, again, and that's why I position myself as this fixer model, because people are always going to have problems. You know, people are always going to need something fixed or troubleshooted. But if I've put all my eggs in the basket of my looks or my abs, or, you know, how many squats I can do, or I can wear these, you know, sexy pants, it doesn't last very long, you know. And I don't think these people are, you know, anyway, that's just my take on it.
Yeah. So maybe how can someone just move from just looking influential to actually having a real influence and impact?
Yeah, again, it's got to be about the work, you know. And then Jerry Harvey was a perfect example. That guy, everybody in Australia knows who Jerry Harvey is. And my business partner, he said to me, he goes, "Mate, you go into Jerry's office, he does not have a computer on his desk. You know, he made everything about the work." So I think if you genuinely create a service or a product of value, you know, that's like Ferrari. Again, they built the most beautiful, supposedly sexiest, fastest, nicest car, and people want that. You know, they put all their energy into that instead of having a rubbish product and then trying to market that and get people to buy it. It's Rolls-Royce is another one. You know, like, I mean, handmade. You know, they're talking about the line is still hand drawn from a guy on the side of the car all the way along. A guy whose job is just to paint the line on the car. You know, I think it's all got to be about the work rather than chasing clout, or because when people dig a little bit deeper, they see that there's no substance, there's no value. You know, it's fool's gold in a way. You know, shiny object syndrome, and it's happened for generations. You know, there's so many different examples you can use for that, but deception, that's what it is.
Okay. So let's speak about scaling businesses without the fluff, right? What are the most effective ways for business to scale without wasting time or even resources?
Well, give me an example. What kind of businesses are you speaking about? When you say scale, the first thing I think of scale, I think of e-commerce, is all these e-commerce businesses, like, which is not, I'll be honest, it's not an area I know really anything about. Like, it's, what do you mean? What type of businesses?
So let's say, for instance, like the way I run a manufacturing business, right? I produce and manufacture yogurt. I might waste time on just getting the influence out there. Is not what I do, but I've seen businesses where they're chasing who's the next influencer who can market my product so that it can be known. instead of just focusing on taking the product and having the best product going to the market. So what is the most effective way a business can scale without having those fluffs in their businesses?
Well, I think, yeah, that's the key. And if I use this pizza brand that I'm working with now as an analogy, that's exactly what they're doing. They found a gap in the market. You know, a lot of the takeaway pizza is unhealthy. It's oily, and their focus was really on. It was a really great conversation that we had. It was around the ingredients, the healthy ingredients, locally sourced from local bakers and butchers. So you're not getting things that are mass produced coming in tins. We had a conversation today. Their pineapple on their pizza is actually from a pineapple. So the pineapple's cut up, it's cut into slices, and then that's the pineapple that goes on the pizza, you know, as opposed to things that's coming out of cans and tins. They were focusing on sustainability. So they were reducing their waste by like 64% or something, so that things are biodegradable. They're focusing on just doing the right thing. You know, their franchises, their business owners in their business, their focus is they want these guys to make money, as opposed to, say, a chain who goes, you know, let's open up all these stores, let's drive the share price up and then sell the business and dump it. All these other stores close down, people lose their money. They're genuinely just focusing on, they want good people in the business. They want to work with good people, and they want people to be successful, and they want to provide a great pizza, so a great product for their clients. Very simple. Great. Okay, awesome. So, you know, sharing that message and getting that out there is a point of difference. But like you said, it is focusing first on having a good product. And then I think today, you know, instead of having to pay these influencers or things like that, if you can find genuine collaborations with other people where it's authentic and it's real. Like if you see me holding up a product and I'm like, hi, I'm Michele and I use this, you can see through that, you know. The best advertisement for Nike is Cristiano Ronaldo scoring bicycle kicks over the head, you know, winning, you know, Champions League finals with these amazing shots. That's it. It's the product in action. People seeing it, you know. That's what drives that. People, oh, they see that, you know, it's an aspirational thing. You know, today too, there are so many opportunities with social media, with collaborations, with getting your brand out there. So it's a really good opportunity. Yes, it is flooded and there's a lot of people, but 20, 30 years ago, you had, in Australia, you had the yellow pages, you had the phone book, you had billboards. There wasn't the opportunity to be able to create something off an app, off CapCut. You know, you can shoot a video, you can upload it, and, you know, there's so much opportunity. If you just study, even your phone, a lot of my business partners and people I work with, I haven't used a laptop for 4.5 years. When I left the corporate world and some consulting that I was doing, I put my laptop in a bag and I put it in storage. And I just use a Samsung S24 at the moment with a pen. And one of the guys that I worked with recently, looked at me and he goes, I've never seen you with a laptop. And I said, I don't use one. He goes, hey, you mean to tell me you do all these deals, all this content, all the business, everything you're doing off just your phone? I said, yeah. He goes, I can't believe that. But it just goes to show how much you can do off a phone. Don't have an office, you can just do things, you can create something from nothing. But I suppose to answer that question, there was an American speaker. He was a Christian guy as well. I think he had very good Christian values. He was a businessman, he was a teacher. His name was Zig Ziglar, and he said, you can have anything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. So certainly with my business model, you know, if you want the brand to scale and do those things, it's finding a need, or, you know, filling a need and finding what people want. If you start with those correct questions, that's, I think, a better foundation than I want to be famous, I want to be rich, I want to be, you know,
Yeah, so it's literally just going back and identify what can I do actually to help more people, you know, and then the rest will follow.
Well, look at what you're doing, Shaq, with your podcast. You know, you've recognized there's a gap. You know, there's people in your country who probably don't have the same opportunities and advantages. They don't have access to the same funds. They don't have access to the same money or support. They can't walk down the street in Sydney and bump into probably some crypto billionaire or shops, you know. Is that a fair thing? Resources is very limited. I've never been.
Even just access to mentors. In our country, there are not so many people have even just access to mentors. Yeah.
So look at what you've done. Look, now we're having a conversation. I'm sure you've had a lot of interesting guests, and you will continue to have some more interesting things. But why is this going to be successful? Because you're helping a lot of people who don't have access to this kind of information, or they don't have access to mentors. Yeah, they might have access to YouTube generic stuff, but if they want things that are specific, you're asking specific questions. And I can hear when you're asking. Sometimes I might be here and you're trying to narrow it down here to make it relevant and digestible for people, your listeners and your audience in your country. Is that a fair call?
Yes.
Exactly. So I'm pretty sure you didn't start this podcast going, you know what, I want to start this podcast so I can buy an $80,000 Rolex and a Lamborghini. That's not your goals, I can tell. Is that true?
Never thought of that even.
There you go. So, and what you're doing, I think, is great, which is why I was happy to jump on. Is, I've worked overseas, or it was in Cambodia, and we worked at some orphanages for a while, and it was really humbling to see people of different things that we take over here for granted. So what you're doing is fantastic, where you're that conduit, and you're like, well, what do my people need? What are some things over here that people don't have, that they lack resources, and you're the one going out there and getting it for them. And who knows how many entrepreneurs or business owners or people will be successful because of your platform and channel, because of information they've heard, or they've connected with a mentor, or they've found something of value that helped them. But without you, that wouldn't have happened. And I genuinely believe, whether it's God or whether it's the universe, you'll be blessed for things like that. Someone else may come later and go, Shaq, mate, thank you very much. You might not know this, but one of the episodes you did, this helped me and this happened, and now I've been able to change my life. What a blessing that is,
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, so it's a good thing you mentioned, because with this, my generation, we might actually forget about that.
I don't even know how old you are. How old are you, Shaq? People
I
from
just
your
turned.
country, you
I
age
just
really
turned
well.
30
White
last
people,
week.
like we. What
I
was that?
actually just turned 30 last week, so I'm not that old.
30. Okay, so
Yeah,
I'm
30.
10 years older than you, but I look
Ah,
probably 20 years older than you. That's
yeah,
good.
you look way younger than you look way younger. You look like a Gen Z actually.
I feel like you're hitting on me now. I'm into women, Shaq. So just take it easy a little bit, man.
Okay.
No, I appreciate
I
that.
think we really might have, just as you mentioned, my generation, we've actually forgot the back end. The back end is
You forgot
what we should have
what?
in
Sorry.
mind. I mean, our generation, we've really forgot that actually business success comes from, solving people's problem. We've had
Yeah,
it in another, how I think we've had it upside down, where is we get the fame, we get the likes, we get the views, we get the best marketing agents or the best trending challenges and hashtags, and then
yeah,
we focus on solving the problem later. I
yeah.
think that's a very good perspective that you've actually shed the light, and I hope people can actually follow that model where we find something that is solving so many people's needs, and then um, focus on the other things later. But what if the problem is actually finding that idea that can actually solve the problem? How can a person who's
Give me an
having,
example. Sorry, I don't understand.
because you see, people like in my country, there's a lot of
Yes,
people who are unemployed, okay? And they're
sure.
relying on the government to give them jobs,
Mm,
fly them to other countries so that they can get employment. So for me, in my end, I usually like, how about if these people have ideas that can make them, earn a living or be successful in whatever they think. So what about the person who's having a problem of finding that idea um, to do so that they can be successful in their business or even just themselves? What idea would you give them? Is it reading books, or where can they find that unique idea that can take them to another level?
So there's two parts of the question there. You're talking about people who are struggling to find work. Are you talking about that, or are you saying how do you find an idea that can get you to the next
Yeah,
level? What do you mean?
I think they're all joined, because once you don't have that idea, of a business, you straight
Yeah,
on a go and find a job, So
yeah.
what would be our advice to them? Instead of looking for a job, how will they be able to find that one unique idea that can help them just be successful in their life?
Well, I think, rather than trying to think too big, you can think locally, right? So, if you're talking about fixing problems, it sounds like, people in your community, there might be a lot of challenges locally that,
Yeah.
they can fix first. So I don't know the lay of the land over there. Like what are some shortages? What are some problems? So I think if people can try and solve those problems locally, it's easier to start there than try and start big or overseas, Like for me, I've never been to Africa. I don't know what the challenges are there, but so it's easier for me to operate in my area here in businesses that I know and understand. When people say stay in your lane, stick to what you know. So I think the first part is looking around. What's a need? I mean, you tell me what are some needs or what are some things over there in, say, your area and where you live in Kenya? What are some of the challenges that people are or the society are facing there at the moment? Give me an example, just as
Yeah.
a discussion.
So for instance, someone might come from a family that was not able to take them to school,
Sure.
So
Yes.
the foundation or even just having that education, they might lack it. And in the period of them growing up, because now maybe they're idle, they don't have anything to do, they get women or young ladies pregnant, So that's another level of challenge. And then now they're in a position where they can't think. The only solution they think about is getting a job so that I can be able to sustain my family,
Provide
So
the
what
family.
about those
Sure.
people who have such a background? Because with YouTube now, you can go and get information. But having that idea, because even for me, I usually feel privileged to be a business person because I've never been in a situation where I'm employed. I feel like I'm kind of favored to have uh, a brain that can think of business. But there are people who are like, oh, I need someone else to make me successful. I need to be in this job so that I can be successful. What is your advice to them?
I think I did an episode on this, just a little video recently. Like I don't look down at anyone with a 9 to 5. For many years in my life, I've had a 9 to 5 job, and I think our society and pillars of our society are built on people with jobs, with 9 to 5 jobs. You're talking about people having babies. The doctor who delivers those babies work a 9 to 5 job. The cleaner who comes and takes the rubbish bins weekly, has a 9 to 5 job. If something bad happens as a violent crime and you call the police, they have a 9 to 5 job. The fire brigade, like we need people working jobs to. Sorry, the TV's just turned off here. The lighting background. 1 second. We need these people in these jobs for our society to keep running. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. And you do need some sort of income to do anything. Like you said, you have a job and this is something you do on the side. I'm sure without that job, you wouldn't be able to afford to have your beautiful studio that you got there. It looks like you've got about 100 square meters of studio. You've got those big screens behind you. I'm just
Yeah,
joking, but
yeah,
you know what I mean? So I think you need that stability and you need that income, because if you're living, in survival, or you're living just on the breadline and your bills and you've got to do this, you're reactionary, right? You're living in fear. You're not in this flow state of being able to create. If you're getting chased by somebody who's trying to mug you, for example, that's not a time where you're going to start brainstorming ideas for a business, correct?
yeah,
You're
yeah,
panicking, you're running, you're in survival. You're like, I got to get out of here. This guy's trying to rob me or kill me or something's happening. That's not a time to create. Where you create is when you're sitting calm, relaxed, your bills are paid, your wife and kids are supported, everything is okay. It's at that level. Okay, you go, okay, what's the next idea I can come up with? So if you're broke and you're living in a cardboard box under a bridge, you're probably just thinking about your next meal. You're not thinking about the next idea that's going to help make money in 5 years. You know what I mean? Because your
yeah.
basic needs are not met. And I'm working with a client at the moment. He was working in a job where he's offered $100,000 a year. Great money for a young kid. He said no, because he wanted to go and start his own business, a business that he could have very easily started on the side while he was still making that money. But he goes, oh, I'm going to leave the job and I'm going to go and do my own thing. The guy makes like now 45 grand a year, or he makes less money, and he's just working, doing a job that he doesn't necessarily like. and he had this good sales job, but he was trying to build this clothing label and this business, and he was just trying to scale, and he got caught up in the hype. And and I even did that myself once at the time in this business I was running. I was on a really, really good 6-figure plus income, and I wanted to pursue acting more professionally. I wanted to do that as a full-time thing. So I stepped back from the business 2 days a week and took a massive financial loss to pursue acting. And what did I find that I was doing? I wasn't doing much on my spare days. I had all this time off. I went to the gym, I slept in, but life got more difficult because financially I wasn't making the same kind of money. So I think the solution there is you've got to get your basic needs met first. You've got to have money coming in. You've got to have the bare necessities before you try and bite off more than you can chew. But then after that, yeah, of course, so what's I suppose the second part of the question is the education piece. So in Kenya there, does everybody have access to the internet and to YouTube? Is that readily available to most people?
I can say 60%. There's a percentage that is just not having that access to a lot of the privileges that normal person can have.
Sure. So even for me, that's crazy to hear that. We live in a country where Wi-Fi, you've got it at every McDonald's or library, it's just everywhere. So I suppose to the people who have access there, it's a twofold thing. There's so much information and content available. There's podcasts. So, I genuinely believe you can learn more from the internet and from technology today than you could learn 12 years in school. If you're really serious about changing your situation and you narrow in, there is so much information available to build businesses. YouTube, anything comes up. You might have to filter through the stuff that salesy are trying to get you to buy a course, but there's so much information available. But I think the trap is there's so many distractions available because you've got Netflix, you've got, all these other things on there, OnlyFans and all this other stuff on the internet too that distract people, this instant gratification. So I heard a saying recently, it said, this is the easiest time in the world to become successful or to learn or to make something of yourself because of the availability of this information. But it's also the easiest time to get distracted because there's all these other things out there available too. So I think it comes down to the individual of being able to stay focused and, if that answers that question.
Yeah. So as we finish, I want to speak about the future of agency model. Yeah. You say that agency model is outdated. So what doesn't work anymore and what is the alternative?
Yeah, so I think the agency model doesn't, and I'm just talking about for me personally, if I was a business owner, I would not employ an agency. And a lot of businesses, as you said, they're at that startup phase. If they're needing branding, Ferrari don't need it. These big brands don't need it. So if you need branding and marketing, it would be safe to say that you either want to grow, you want to scale, or you're not making enough money and you need to be seen more, you need to be more relevant, you need to make more sales. So then what the challenge they have there is money, correct? Is finances, you'd say. A lot of these agencies, they come in, they charge a lot of money, but there's a lot of fluff. There's, people, it's at a snail's pace. It'll take 3 to 6 months. It'll take this. We've got to do that. We'll do this. We'll do whatever. You're having coffees here, meetings, it takes 3, 4 emails to get something done and they might respond a day later. Businesses don't have that bandwidth or that endless supply of cash to be able to keep funding that. And I believe genuinely a lot of that model is based on locking in X number of clients, say it's 5, 10,000, whatever it is a month. They need to pay their bills, their overhead, so everyone can go and sip cafe lattes and, do online shopping at work and, do the bare minimum of work, do what they got to do. Oh, it'll take a week, it'll take 2 weeks. A lot of money that's being wasted, a lot of time that's being wasted. And these brands don't have that, but that business model, they realize that people are not going to be clients for 10 years. There's going to be churn. There's going to be a high attrition rate. So, okay, we need to keep locking in more people. These might stay for 3 months, then we get a few more people, and they need to get maybe 10, 20, 30 clients a month, to be profitable. But that might work for the agency and for them, but it doesn't probably work for the client, because they need results now. They may be about to go broke. They may have put their last amount of money into their product or into research, into whatever, and they need to get to that next level. And what I think the agency model is doing, a lot of people are selling services and products that they either can't provide or that they shouldn't be providing. You know, for example, a digital agency, if you're paying that kind of money and you have people coming with an iPhone to shoot content, how can you be a digital agency and call yourself a digital agency if you don't even know how to use a digital camera? You know, how can you create content and be a storyteller and create narratives if you've never directed, you've never worked in film and television? You know, before that, you were working in retail. Let's be real. Creating content is creating narratives. It's like creating movies. It's like creating film and television. Anyone that watches a TV show or a movie, they have to be interested into the storyline and the characters. There's an arc. There's an art to telling stories. That's what content is. It's telling a story of a brand, of a person, of a business. How can you do that if you don't have those qualifications? If you've never worked in that industry, you're selling a product or a service that you don't have. Anyone can shoot stuff on a phone and cut it together and cut and put it up. Is that what the client needs? Is that getting the brand story out? Is that adequately describing what the product and service is in a storytelling way? If it was a movie, would people sit through a 2-hour film of a movie made by those people? Probably not. So I think the difference for myself of where I've seen of transitioning away from that agency model is starting with what the client needs, fixing a problem, going, okay, they've got a problem. Most likely it's immediate. They don't have a huge budget. They can't spend $5,000, $10,000 for 12 months, you know, $60,000, $120,000 to kind of get results in 3 months and 6 months. And at the end of it, we didn't really get a lot of value out of it, which is what I've been hearing from a lot of clients is we spent all this money with the agency, we didn't get our money's worth. So I thought, you know what, with the experience I have of that tactical operations where you come in, you assess everything, you diagnose the problem, there's the threat, you execute, you move on, you neutralize the threat, you stabilize the situation. That's always been my mindset, is fast moving, planning, executing, delivering a result. You can't go in and go, oh, well, sorry, you know, we had to do a scenario here, everybody died, people got shot. Oh, well, there's consequences, you know, in that line of work that I did. If you're protecting the Prime Minister and you mess up and he gets shot, that's not good. You know, there's a consequence of you not doing your job. Is people die, people get injured, you lose your job, like you get killed, you get injured. So that mindset was always, I've got to deliver. You've got to be held accountable, held to a standard. Everything is done quickly. And then my experience in filmmaking, directing, producing, working with big, large global tech brands, Samsung, Microsoft, Intel, Lenovo, all these big brands. You know, when they've got money and they've invested in projects, you have to deliver a result. You know, you have to sell products, you have to execute. You can't go back to them and go, hey guys, we got 20 likes and we got this and we got some great content. They don't care about that. They're not going to be happy with that. And you're not going to be in a job very long. So the model that I saw was, well, what if I was able to go into a business very quickly, no fluff, I don't need a big office where I'm paying, you know, $500,000 a year rent and, you know, having this all the flashy stuff and coffee and all this stuff and a receptionist and all these extra wages, which is effectively what the fees are going for. If I'm able to operate on my own, I go and meet clients at their office. We sit down, we have a very quick conversation. Send me all the information of your business. What's the background? What's the history? Like a brief. We're going into a tactical operation scenario. What's the brief? What's the threat? What do we know? What's the objective? What do we need to do? Okay, cool. We're here. Great. What's your problems? Your problems is this. They may know their problems and they tell me, or they may not know, where I can walk in very quickly with the experience I've had and go, you know what, your bottleneck or your problem is here. That's what we need to fix. Let's go to work straight away. I'll start working immediately. First piece of content that we do is out in the next day, the next days, and I usually engage with people for a 3-month period. So charge a little bit more, but if they can afford that 3-month period and I can help them and I can fix their problem quickly, deliver them a return on investment and show them and empower them what they need to do moving forward, then they can go and do it. That's it, you know? And I think that's a much better sustainable model that actually drives ROI. And my business model is not reliant on locking people in for contracts and doing this and doing that. It's just getting results quickly, diagnosing the problem, executing, and then leaving. That's it. And I think that's why, in my opinion, don't get me wrong, I love the agency because, you know, it gives me an opportunity to come in and creates a lot more work for me. So yeah, it's
Okay. So maybe my final question Because
Sure.
if someone is not working with an agency, they might have an internal marketing team, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So if you're to build a marketing team from scratch, yeah, how will it look like?
I wouldn't build a marketing team from scratch.
Mm.
And if I had a marketing team, I'd probably sack most of them if I was in a business, to be honest. And that's a pretty bold thing to say. But what I find every business, not every business, most businesses that I've worked with, the marketing or the brand managers are gatekeepers, because what's their job is internal branding and marketing for that business. That business is paying them to do that job. So if somebody with more experience or someone who's executed at a high level comes in and highlights things that are going wrong, it makes them look bad, right? In their mind, how much energy are they actually going to want to work with somebody like me and going, you're right, we need to fix this, versus, oh my gosh, this guy's a threat. He's exposed that I haven't been doing anything for the last 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or in 2 seconds, he's highlighted stuff that's going wrong in our business that I haven't even noticed. Most of their energy is going to be pushing back, defending. I don't want this person here. I just want to come in every morning, have my coffee, do my thing, have my annual leave, have a sick day once in a while, leave early to pick up the kids or do whatever it is. So I've said this to plenty of businesses. I said you would be better off without somebody like that, because they're gatekeepers. They don't usually have, I'm not talking all, there are probably a lot of really, really good people at a high level doing a lot of work, but I'm talking about that middle management. Most businesses, they haven't built a business or brand themselves from scratch. They're not entrepreneurs. They've learned something from a textbook, or they've started in a junior role and they've learned from somebody else who's employed in a business, and they've just learned basic stuff, and that's what they're doing. But they've never thought outside of the box. They've never built a business. They've never been an entrepreneur. They've never founded anything. So they don't have that experience at that level to execute. So I would definitely not employ or build my own marketing team internally. You look at guys like, there's an Australian guy. I don't know if you've heard of him. There's a guy called Adrian Portelli. If you look him up, he runs a company called LMCT Plus, where he does giveaways and things like that. He was, became really well known from an Australian TV show, The Block, where he has a giveaway business. He has houses, cars, he sells tickets, and he gives these products away. This dude is an absolute genius. That dude is a branding and marketing guru. What he's able to do, what he did on The Block recently here in Australia, was incredible. But if you ask him, I'm sure he wouldn't say, I'm a branding and marketing expert. You would get people on $50, $60, $70, $80,000 a year saying, I'm a branding marketing expert. They're not even in the same realm as what this guy is able to do. The guy's a billionaire. I think he's in his early 30s. He's a billionaire. He's got his own jet. He put a McLaren into a 57th-story building. Absolute genius. But just a guy from the suburbs running his business, that is branding and marketing genius. Someone who thinks outside the square. But as I said, you would have people on an average wage who call themselves experts. Well, if you're an expert, you'd be doing what that guy's doing. Do you remember Prime Energy Drink?
Yeah.
Remember that drink,
For
Prime?
Logan Paul?
From Logan Paul. I mean, that's just a bit of water, a bit of sugar, whatever stuff they've got in there, 600 ml bottle, and they were selling here in Australia for like $15, $16, $17 a bottle. What's that, like 5-10 times more what a Gatorade or something else was? And every kid out there wanted this product. It was cleared off the shelves. How did they do that? That's branding and marketing genius. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those guys, they're just YouTubers. One's doing a bit of boxing, one's doing wrestling. Those guys are the geniuses. How do you go from a YouTuber to creating the most sold energy drink or whatever the drink is on the planet to now I'm a WWE wrestling superstar? No branding marketing guru in a business could do that. You give them 30, 40 years, they wouldn't do anything of value in the business they're working in, let alone something on that scale. So, the world has changed. What worked 10, 15, 20 years ago doesn't work today. When you factor in these different platforms like LinkedIn, YouTube, Meta, Facebook, all these things, it's constantly an evolving and an adapting thing. So, I would definitely advise against the branding and the marketing internal people. I actually had a similar scenario recently. I had a pitch to a big global brand that I did a presentation for. And in terms of marketing and ROI, I asked them for an investment. I said, why don't we partner and we do a 12-month investment? I was asking them for a small figure. I mean, it was still 6 figures, but the ROI was very clearly mapped out of what they were going to get in terms of views, in terms of sales, in terms of everything. Very clear. In terms of their social media presence, their content, what they were doing, this was on another level. And they would have only had to spend a fraction to do this than what they were doing internally. They couldn't wrap their head around it. As soon as it went to the marketing manager, it was almost as if that she didn't read the brief, but within a day, oh, sorry, we're not interested. It's not for us. It's not from brand. And everyone else that I showed were like, this is incredible. If they implement this, it'll work. But for them, you could see it was more of a threat. They were like, oh, geez, if we do this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I would say this to a lot of people if they're trying to work with some of these brands. In most cases, where I've had success is never with the branding of the marketing manager. They're always the gatekeeper. 9 times out of 10, they will shut it down. If it's not their own idea, if it hasn't come from them, or it's not something that they can take a hold of and drive, they'll shut it down. They don't want to know about it because they're not incentivized. Because if your idea works, their job's on the line, they're gone. If they want to do anything with a brand, they either go to the owner or to the CEO, the person at the top who doesn't care who it is or where the idea came from. If it moves the business forward, if it moves the needle, if it makes sales and drives an outcome, they're interested. That's the person you got to speak to. If it's an entrepreneur or founder, you speak to that guy, not to the marketing person, because those people, as I said, gatekeepers, and they're defensive minded. They're not attacking minded people. And certainly
You're not
that's
afraid when
already.
you put it. You're not afraid when you put this out there, they will come. They will come at you.
I don't care because that's the experience I've had. And I'm not saying not all of them. There are a lot of great brand and marketing managers that do really great work. And you look on LinkedIn and you look at their track record. People have done some amazing things, amazing initiatives. So it's not a one size fits all, but I would certainly say the majority of people, if you're talking in terms of entrepreneurship or, global success, there's no brand or marketing manager working in a position that is on the same level as an Adrian Portelli, as a Logan Paul. Would you agree? I mean, those guys are billionaires. So you can't argue with numbers or facts, as you were talking about before. They may be great at doing a job, but if you're talking about the very best, and Adrian Portelli, in terms of branding, marketing, and thinking outside of the square, he's number one. There's no branding or marketing manager that can go, you know what, I know more than you. You don't. You don't have a jet. You don't. The numbers are there, So I don't really care if I upset a few people because that's the facts. That's how it is, The world's changed. And, I think if you're an expert and you're genuinely that great at what you're doing, or you're the best, you probably wouldn't be working for a company. If you're that good, you'd be consulting, you'd be running your own business, and you'd be consulting to multiple businesses, not just working for one. If you're that good and you're the best at building a brand, and that's why, as I said, I went out on my own and I thought, you know what, I've done this at the highest level for brands, for celebrities, for athletes, across multiple areas, and that's why I'm doing what I do now. So.
Wow, amazing. So, I think this is one of my favorite podcasts that we've done with a male guest, and it's really eye-opening. So I'm just wondering, what does it take for a brand to work with you? Maybe as my final question, what does it take for a brand to work with you? What are the things that you look for before you work with the brand, and where can people find you so that they can access you maybe to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I always look for is open-mindedness, is that they're open to a different perspective, that they want to be successful. Like it's a collaborative approach, right? So everybody needs to be able to put their egos aside and know that if there's something that they've identified that could be better or could go to the next level, there needs to be a little bit of that openness, that they're able to bring someone in who, I'm not there, it's not a witch hunt to point and go, okay, you did a bad job here. It's not that. It's just open-mindedness to be able to go, okay, what do we need to do to get to that next level? I've had clients before where we've ended up parting ways after a short period because they brought me in and they, as the expert in what I did, to help them. But then they told me how they wanted me to do it. And how they wanted me to do it was the same way they've been doing it, which got them to the position that they were, struggling or difficult or needed to get. And I was like, well, whatever their trade was, for example, say he's an electrician. If I came in there as a branding, marketing, and business growth specialist. And I started on the first day of us working together. I said, give me the tools and let me start doing the electrical work. He'd throw me out. He'd go, you're an idiot. You can't do that. You're not skilled. But in his mind, he thought, oh, but I can tell you how to do your job, you know, because he's so close and he's attached. Now it's got to be done this way. And I tried to explain to him, listen, you've been doing it this way and it's not working. That's why I'm here. But he couldn't let go of that, you know. So I think the first thing is definitely open-mindedness. Somebody also who is open to a different way of doing business. For example, this pizza brand that I spoke to today. I had a chat with the business director on the phone last night before our meeting today, and he said, you know, this is very unorthodox, the way you do business. It's very different, you know. And I said to him, it was a line that I saw in The Matrix. Have you ever seen The Matrix?
Yeah, I've seen
the first one?
Yeah.
You know, when Neo and Trinity are going to get Morpheus and they're getting all the guns and they're getting everything and they're going to go and rescue him from the building where the agents are holding him.
Yeah.
And Trinity says to Neo, she goes, nobody's ever done anything like this before. And he says to her, he goes, that's why it's going to work. So I suppose the second thing is open-mindedness, that it's not, you know, an agency where there's, you know, going to be a big office. You know, if somebody genuinely wants to get to the next level, if they want to fix the business, they want to do something that works, they're happy to be authentic and to go away from trying to be like everybody else, trying to follow trends, trying to go viral. If they genuinely want business success first and then scale from there, that's what I look for. I look for working with good people because you know, you're going to be working with these people for at least a few months. You want to be able to have that, you know, work with good people, you know, and fortunately, you know, when you work for yourself, you have the luxury of being able to choose, do I want to work with these people or not? And also someone who wants to, you know, if they're happy to do business differently and save money as well, because I genuinely believe the model of locking people in for a contract to this, if you're that good at what you do, why do you need to lock somebody in for that long? If they've got a problem, does it take 12 months to fix it? Or does it take 12 months to fix it because it makes you more money? You know, my model is different. I want to come in, fix the problem. If it's 2 months, let's just work together for 2 months. It's cheaper for the business. It's better for me. I get to go in there, fix the problem, help them out, set them on the right path, and then they move forward. If they need me, they can call me. But, you know, I get to travel and I love traveling. I love, you know, I've got family in different states. So I like to be able to work here for a little bit, work there, do different things, do some calls, you know, video catch-ups like this. It's good. It's variety. And it's different. So, yeah.
So where can people find you? Where can people access you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the easiest. I think if you look on LinkedIn, you know, there's the experience and the things that I've done. I've started putting some videos there. Instagram, I've got some stuff there. You can Google me, see my acting experience. You know, so the easiest way to connect, I think, is LinkedIn. You know, follow me on LinkedIn and send me a message. And if it's something I'm genuinely interested in, if it's a project and something that I can help with, or it's a business or a brand that I can get excited about, it's fun. You know, if your friend calls you and goes, hey, we're going to go on an adventure, you know, we're going to go over here, we're going to, you know, do a four-wheel drive. It's things that I enjoy. I want to do things that I'm enjoying and I'm passionate about, you know.
Amazing. This is one of the, I've learned a lot. I'm like, I think I was the one being mentored. Even the people be watching. I was the one being mentored.
Sorry?
I was the one, actually. You were speaking to me so many things that you've mentioned, and I'm like, yeah, actually, I've been chasing the cloud, you know, instead of just focusing on the real thing, you know. So,
well, you look at someone like, you know, who, if you look at someone in your position who's doing it really well, who would you say, I'll ask you the question, who do you think is doing what you do in terms of an interview or podcast better than anybody else in the world?
okay, first of all, me, I'm doing good. And then,
good answer. That should be always the first one. So after you, who else?
So after me, there is this guy doing Diary of the CEO. Is really doing a great job.
Okay.
It's called
What
Steven.
about a guy who's got the #1 podcast in the world called Joe Rogan? What do you think of him?
Joe Rogan is good. I was actually listening to him yesterday. I think he was doing it with Joe Dispenza. Yeah, he's also very good. You wanna bring him to our podcast?
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him. But
do you know him personally?
Do I know him? No, I don't know him personally. But But I know somebody who was interviewed by him. It's like you always know someone through somebody. You know, I know someone who was interviewed by him a couple of times. So, and all the things I hear he's a great guy, but he's a good example. You know, when you were saying about chasing clout, like look how relaxed that guy is. He's sitting in there, he's laughing, he's joking, he's having a great time. He's got the #1 podcast. He gets amazing guests on his show. Everybody wants to be on his show. He doesn't have to sell himself to anybody. And what does he do? Is he sitting there flashing his Lamborghinis and all this? He's just being himself. Most of the time, he doesn't speak. He's asking the questions. He's getting the information, and he's letting the other people speak. Correct?
Yeah.
It's a very similar model to what you're doing. You know, he's facilitating those conversations, and even his model, he goes, "Oh, it reminds me of that. Pull that up on the screen." You know, then they're joking, they're having fun. And he's a perfect example. He is the antithesis of a modern day influencer clout chaser. I wouldn't say he's a clout chaser. You know, he was on, as the announcer and the fight caller in the UFC. And Dana White said at the beginning, he did it for free because he loved the sport. He goes, "You mean I get to sit there ringside and watch my favorite sport?" He wasn't chasing clout. He didn't ask for money. He just did what he loved. He added value. He did his job really well. And look where he ended up. You know, that's a perfect example of someone like that, you know, who's the best at what they do, but he's not, you know, I don't think he ever went out essentially to try and grow his social media. He didn't try and be the most famous man in the world. I think he just genuinely did what he enjoyed doing. And he created a platform and he added value. Like how many people has Joe Rogan helped through the interviews and the guests that he's had on board there, the conversations, that he's had, that people have gone, wow, like, you know, exactly what you're doing. He's you know, that facility, he's that conduit. So he's a perfect example of, yeah.
I think I learn a lot. Anytime I see him uploading videos, I just know there's something that is I'm gonna learn from here and actually go to the next level. And I feel that is what you've done. I feel like today you brought this episode to be like a Joe Rogan interview because there's a lot of things, many things. I think even the short clips that we're gonna put on LinkedIn so that people can go and check on YouTube, they're going to be more than 5, you know, because I feel like this is those top level Joe Rogan interviews that I've done today, you know, for a very long
So
period
you're
of
going to
time.
cut it down into little pieces, are you? Is that the plan? Like little?
Yeah. I'm gonna cut it up so that people can get those brief snapshots so that they can head over to YouTube. So,
Can you
man,
give me one more? Can you give me one more question as a little snapshot?
yeah, maybe your best advice that you can
No,
give.
I was going to say the question that I asked before we started recording.
Okay.
I said, are you going to ask me that question like that famous guy? Do you know the one I mean?
The famous guy, which
The
one?
guy from the guy from Uganda. Well, you've got to ask
Uh,
me the question now. That would be funny. That
why are
one
you
will probably
gay?
get the most views. So start again. Go again. Ready? I'll start fresh. All right, go. Got to stop laughing. Come on.
Wait, that part, that thing is funny. You want me to ask that question? You want me
Sure.
to... But you're not gay. Why should I ask that question?
Let's just do it because it's funny. You can use that as a little clip.
So why are you gay?
Me? Who's gay? I'm not gay.
Oh my
Uh,
god. Oh my god. I hope we're gonna get something like that in the clip and it's gonna go viral. Maybe even this part is gonna reach to him one day.
why are you gay? That's literally,
Why
as
are
I
you
said,
gay?
that's the first thing. When I looked at your episode and I saw the
Mhm.
setup, I was like, that was the first thing that came to mind because you're talking of branding. How's that for branding? Everybody knows that guy. Like he's like a little a GIF. You know, when you see comments and his face is like, you
Why are
know,
you gay?
why are you gay? Anyway. But anyway, I'll let you wrap up. What did you want to
Yeah.
say? Thank you again
I,
for having
I,
me on your show.
Yeah, I hope we can do this some other time. I hope we can bring you to Kenya because we wanna find a way that we can bring our mentors to Kenya with time. So hopefully
Oh,
this year, at the end of the year, we're looking for. I hope you give us your time. You know, we take care of everything.
I
You
would
just give
love
us
to.
your
If you can
time
find
and
a way
presence.
for us to get together in Kenya, I would absolutely love anything that I can do to help. As I said, I've been very fortunate in my life. I've had a lot of good opportunities. I've had some very big struggles and I've had some successes. And as I said, that Zig Ziglar quote always comes to mind. You can have anything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. So anything that I can do to help add value, mate, I'm all for it. Just keep in touch. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I want to say as well how well prepared and organized you were with the questions. It was really, I've done, a lot of things over the time and mentoring, and I worked with, a school for 12 months where I mentored. It was 2 days a week. And you've been very organized. So it's been a pleasure to deal with you, mate. Thank you for the opportunity, genuinely.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for actually pouring out the gems. I mean, you've given it all to your best. So I'm really,
Well,
really,
we'll
really
see.
grateful.
Hopefully it lands and helps some people. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So before we close, I want to thank my sponsors again, Brandrico More. For anyone who is lactose intolerant, go get your best vegan product with Brandrico More. Also, they have coconut oil. So anyone who loves coconut oil, Brandrico has the best. Actually, they have the best coconut oil because it's coming all the way from Watamu. And anyone who loves charity, we are sponsoring a school in Kenya called Rufina School. So go out, give them food, give them books, sponsor their tuition fee, and God will bless you. Thank you so much. Looking forward to see you again on the next episode. Ciao, ciao.